Canada as a country, many of the taxes that are collected or could be collected are actually given back in the form of grants and other incentive programs. This is a source of funding that is highly valuable. What is shared trade is technically a tax credit. It is actually cash that comes into your business. You can get up to 65% of T4 salaries. It's a significant amount. It's money that's often simpler to get than it seems. There is no downside to going through the process and applying. You don't have to take any risks to educate yourself and potentially apply for these programs.
Today we're diving into the complex world of government funding, focusing on how businesses can unlock the significant capital available through programs like the scientific research and experimental development, or we call it SR&ED tax credit. This is Maheen, and welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast, where we explore the strategic insights and expert guidance empowering Canadian entrepreneurs to really fuel their innovation and growth. Today, we're diving into the complex world of government funding, focusing on how businesses can unlock the significant capital available through programs like the scientific research and experimental development, or we call it SR&ED tax credit. Because in a competitive market, maximizing your R&D funding and ensuring compliance are paramount for reinvesting in expansion and innovation. Our guest today is a recognized expert in this field with a strong technical and advisory background. Joining us is Shake Dewan, the principal consultant at Henderson Consulting Associates and CEO of AI Forward. Shake is a former Deloitte AI consultant known for his expertise in Canadian government funding programs. Henderson Consulting provides end-to-end support to businesses seeking funding, specializing in technical and financial reporting for SR&ED claims. Today, we'll discuss lots including unlocking Canadian government funding, mastering the SR&ED program for maximum funding, the essential documentation needed to avoid audit risks, leverage the full funding landscape, and the value of an expert partner in achieving success. So without a further ado, let's welcome our guest, Shake. Shake, we're very pleased to have you on the show today. How are you?
Hi, Maheen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here and happy to talk to the audience about grants and how they can help their businesses.
Very pleased to have you with us. Shake, you are a recognized expert in Canadian government funding, and for many entrepreneurs, navigating the landscape of programs and incentives can be quite overwhelming. So let's really start with the big picture. What strategies can entrepreneurs use to find the right funding programs, avoid common application pitfalls, and use that capital to drive growth in the tech revolution?
Okay, perfect. So I'll answer. So you asked me about the big picture. I'll start there, and then I'll go into the specifics. So big picture, look, Canada as a country really has, higher corporate taxes than the US, for example, and higher taxes in general. But what a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs don't know and don't understand well is that many of the taxes that are collected or could be collected are actually given back in the form of grants and other incentive programs to really promote the growth for businesses and therefore the Canadian economy. So this is one of the ways in which our tax dollars actually get used, is to really re-stimulate and fund the economy. Unfortunately, because it is a government program, there is a lot of complexity, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, and it's hard for businesses to navigate it, but when they don't, they're missing out on a lot of funding that is available to them. And a lot of this funding is non-dilutive, whether it's in the form of grants or other sorts of financing. So we always encourage businesses that this is a source of funding that is highly valuable. Now, there are different categories, okay? There's like pre-revenue companies, startups, like people who have a lot of R&D. That works a little bit differently than post-revenue businesses. And especially for post-revenue, it doesn't have to be a startup. It doesn't have to be as much of deep tech or R&D. There are many more ways in which those businesses can explore things. The final thing that I want to say is that the grant landscape is always changing and evolving. So at present, there are over 1,500 or 1,600 programs available in total, both federal and provincial. And again, there's both federal and provincial. And because of the tariffs that were imposed by the US, there have been attempts by the government to have programs for that, for example. So the government can also be quite responsive to changes. So it's important to be in the know. So that's like the first broad, big picture framework that I would lay out, that there's non-dilutive funding, both federal and provincial. It's complex and always changing, but it's a really good source of funding. That's a big part of where our tax dollars go. So it's really, we really encourage business owners and entrepreneurs to leverage those.
That's a very clear strategic outline, Shake, and it's clear that unlocking government funding it requires a proactive and a very informed approach that you explained. Now let's explore a core program that is central to R&D funding, which is the SR&ED program or SHRED program, is what people call it.
Yes.
Shake, the SHRED program is Canada's largest tax incentive for R&D, but many companies they underclaim due to process complexity. Please tell us, how can startups and tech firms structure R&D projects to maximize the SHRED claims, and what are the key criteria they must meet for eligibility?
Perfect. So I want to actually address some important things about this program. So yeah, the SR&ED or the SHRED program is available to all businesses in Canada. This is the first point I want to make. This is both for startup, deep tech sort of R&D companies, but and tech, but it's available to all businesses. This can include medical innovations that a lot of hospitals could be doing, doctors could be doing. This can include a lot of businesses today are incorporating AI and other sorts of technological advancements. All of those are potential candidates for this grant. So it's applicable to every business owner. Should be looking at this grant as a potential way for them to get extra funding. Now, what is SHRED? SHRED is technically a tax credit. Okay, it's a refundable tax credit for R&D that you've done, which I'll explain. But this is in contrast to other tax credits. This is a kind of tax credit that actually ends up as money in your business account. So it's not just a tax credit; it is actually cash that comes into your business, and it is technically a reimbursement on investments that you've made. So there are no restrictions on how you can use the funds because technically you've already spent the money, and they're reimbursing you. Okay. So suppose you added AI to your business, say last year or this year, you would have 18 months after that to file a SHRED claim.
Mhm.
Okay, and within that 18 month span, within 2 to 3 months you'd get the money back. Now, how much can you get? Right, this is very important. So you can get up to 65% of T4 salaries. This is one way to calculate. There are other ways to calculate how much you can get. But just a very simple example is if you submitted, say, a couple of 100,000 for your T4s, you could get 65% of it back. So for 200,000, you can get about 130,000 back potentially for SHRED. So it's a significant amount that you can actually get back as a business owner. And so whether you're doing smaller claims or larger claims, there are certain steps you want to take to really make sure that you're going to get it. Okay. You want to take a very proactive approach to start to, like, say, document a little bit of what you're doing. Like, okay, so we want to apply for this innovation grant. First thing to understand is what qualifies. So what qualifies for SHRED is there are two criteria.
Mhm.
One is there's some scientific uncertainty, okay? It sounds very technical. What it means is you're not sure if it will work or not. And it's if you Google it, nobody else has a simple answer to this question, okay? So, how do we build an effective chatbot for our business, right? It's not clear. Or suppose you need to adjust, like medical, you need to adjust treatment protocol for a certain kind of patient, and that is not easily available in the public domain. Then there's scientific uncertainty, right? For example, if it's based on certain demographic features of your patients, right? Some of them may use certain substances, some of them may be of different ethnicities. So it creates some uncertainty about what kinds of things would really work well for them, right?
Mhm.
Similarly, if you're implementing a new CRM, there's an uncertainty on how it will work in your business, what the optimal workflows in that CRM would be. So there are many ways in which you can have scientific uncertainty in a business. So it's like you're doing things you're not sure if it'll work or not. You're not sure how it'll work. The second criteria, there's some technological or technical advancement.
Right.
Okay. So it could be a scientific advancement, like I said, treatment protocols and things like that. But for the majority of businesses that are non-medical, it would be more along the lines of, we've added AI, for example. That's technical. We've added a new software solution. That's technical. It could also be new manufacturing methodology. So if you're a producer and you're doing anything around like your production, either your processes or the materials you're using to make things, those can qualify, right? Even if you're a distributor, you would still have to deal with supply chain and logistics. So those are all things that are candidates. And if you're doing, as most businesses do, systematic improvements in those areas, that can all qualify. Okay. So first step is to understand what can qualify. Okay. Step two, once you have a clear sense of what you can qualify for with your SHRED program, the next thing to do is so let's plan, right? So we'd say at that point you'd have determined you would qualify. Maybe something you did last year already qualified. So then we'd advise you either you can talk to the government about the program. They have webinars. You can also talk to SHRED consultants like ourselves and really understand how you can really plan ahead. To maximize how much you're going to claim, right? So that's putting in the right documentation, making sure that you're prioritizing the right projects, making sure you're allocating the right amount of time and budget. So a lot of that's very contextual. So broadly, we say most businesses are potential candidates. It depends on what they're doing, not what industry they're in. Number two is, I've given some examples. If business owners have a sense that they may qualify, the next step would be really to start thinking about planning it and then start talking to some SHRED consultants and getting some education on what sorts of things qualify. Again, the language that's used by the government is very, very technical and rigorous. But often what we see is that a lot of business owners that don't kind of speak that language would still qualify. And that's really our job, is to help them bridge that gap and understand that, we are actually eligible. And this is a significant amount that we could get. And again, SHRED is something that you can apply for every year. So it's a multi-year program. And so that's a huge advantage of it. It's been around for 40 years. They give over $3 billion in funding to over 20,000 businesses. And this is money that you're probably already spending in your business. So you're really eligible for it and you should claim it. Again, you have 18 months. So for businesses who are listening right now, you could still potentially apply for 2024 and maybe this year, and you can certainly plan for next year.
No, it's incredibly valuable guidance, Shake, and it simplifies that core requirements of such a complex program. Now let's discuss the most critical factor for a successful SHRED claim, which is documentation and reporting. Shake, poor documentation is the most common reason for a SHRED audit or denial, and you emphasize the importance of audit readiness. Please tell us, what best practices should businesses follow to keep their SHRED reports audit ready and reduce the risk of CRA reviews?
Okay, great. So let me first clarify. So SHRED is dispersed by the CRA, okay? But it is a separate department in the CRA than the tax team, okay? So while a SHRED claim can get reviewed and say audited in quotes, it is not a tax audit, okay? Your business is not getting a tax audit from the CRA. They are just looking at the scope of the claim that you've made to see whether it really lines up with their requirements and it qualifies, okay? Now, if they decide to look into your business, it's very important that you have documented what you're claiming, right? Obviously, if there's no... So the way SHRED works is the burden of proof is on the business, not on the government. So, in our legal system, you're innocent until proven guilty. This is not like that. Here, you really have to prove that you actually did what you want to claim for, right? But sometimes when people say, okay, like, how do I do all this documentation, all that? A lot of documentation can be done as process documentation, as in ongoing, like you have emails, you have messages, maybe if there's software involved, you can show timelines of installation, use, all of that. So there's a lot of ongoing evidence that gets created as part of business activities, okay? So that's important, and that can be created and systematized, okay? So that's one piece. Another piece is There is some formal amount of work that can be required for certain businesses. And that's something that, again, we recommend looking at official guidance, talking to a consulting company to really help you figure out what documentation to put in place and do that. But yeah, with all the documentation in place, it is, not every claim will get reviewed. Many will go through as is. But even if you're getting reviewed, as long as the documentation is properly done, you have a good chance of getting it. And if you're willing to do the work, even if you get denied 1 year after review and they review a second year, you can get it in the second year. So it can be a learning process for businesses. So again, if there are some mistakes or there's some misunderstandings, there's not really negative consequences. You can always apply again next year.
Mm-hmm.
It is reviewed on a year-by-year basis, right? And it's just a deny or approve decision. Whether or not they review you, it's still a deny or approve decision. They're not going further than that in this sort of review. So yeah, I think it is important to have the right documentation, and a lot of that can be done in an ongoing way. And a lot of businesses have a lot of documentation, but then it's also about structure and narrative around the documentation to really convey the story and show that compellingly that yes, all of this was done.
That's a vital takeaway, Shake. And it's clear that meticulous, real time documentation is the gold standard for really defending a claim. Listeners, if you are looking to maximize your R&D funding, please learn from this conversation that we have with Shake about mastering the SR&ED program, avoiding common pitfalls, and getting the strategic guidance that you need for fueling your innovation and business growth. Now, let's continue our conversation with Shake. Now we're taking a quick break. Please don't go nowhere, because when we come back, we'll explore how Canadian businesses can go beyond SR&ED and tap into a broader ecosystem of funding opportunities.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep, healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah, well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep, that's all us. That's all UPS.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's dive into how SMEs can leverage programs like IRAP, MyTax, and provincial grants to accelerate their innovation and growth journey. Now let's look beyond SR&ED to the broader funding landscape for Canadian SMEs, because Shake, while the SR&ED program is vital, Canadian companies have access to a wider ecosystem of non-dilutive funding options. Please tell us, how can Canadian SMEs leverage non-dilutive funding like IRAP, MyTax, and provincial grants to accelerate innovation and global growth?
Perfect. So I will talk about the wider landscape. Just also, even for the SR&ED program, it is both federal and provincial. So usually there's a federal disbursement, which is complemented by provincial disbursement. So depending on your province, the amount you get can vary, okay? But you only have to do one application. Now, there are some others, like the IRAP program. So the IRAP program is so SR&ED is more of a reimbursement of money you've spent. IRAP is more about forward-looking, like, okay, we're planning this project, and then the government can help you fund it before you get started, okay? Now, the important thing, IRAP is a really good program. It's a little bit more heavy than SR&ED in terms of documenting, like quite a bit more. So you really want to be sure that you're willing to do the work it takes. Like, it requires the temperament from the business owner to invest, that kind of thing. And also want to understand that there's very intelligent ways you can combine these programs. But say if you did an IRAP, it will then reduce the amount you can claim for SR&ED. Okay, that's to prevent double dipping. So that's, again, very important, is if you want to combine multiple programs, you really want to structure them intelligently, because they can If there's overlap, they can reduce from one program or another program. Obviously, the net amount is still growing, but there are ways to structure it better and there's ways to structure it worse. So it's important to do that. So you mentioned IRAP, that's one of them. There are a variety of provincial programs that exist. There's even also the Ontario Jobs Grant, for example, for training and things like that, and upskilling your employees, which is also a significant program. Um, I think overall, so again, as I said, there's over 1,500 to 1,600 programs, including a new one around tariffs. So, if you're shipping into the U.S. and over 20% of your goods are being exported, there's a loan that you can get, I believe. And again, I may have the details slightly wrong, but I believe it's a very low interest loan. So there are different ways in which you can get supported, and all of these are non-dilutive, and often they're on better terms than you'd get with an investor. So that's really good. But the disadvantage of the non-dilutive funding is it's also conditional in its own way, right? It's not. You have to really play within the parameters of what they're looking for. So for a lot of businesses, we do find sometimes they're wasting time trying to chase grants, and it can distract them from the core business. So our recommendation is always to focus on the core business and to make sure that's solid. And grants, even if you're doing multiple, are supplementary, even non-dilutive funding. Now, obviously, for pre-revenue companies like deep tech companies, it's a little different. The R&D cycle is way longer, right? So in that case, some of these programs are very, very good as a supplement, sometimes to investors, sometimes to bootstrapping, or sometimes they can manage just within these budgets. So there are a couple of these programs. I think one of them is you can collaborate with universities and the company as well. And sometimes you can hire cheaply from universities and facilitate, again, innovation, which also provides jobs for students who are doing technical like STEM fields, for example. So there are many, many ways in which the government does support fundamental work in businesses and R&D. And for deep tech companies, those make a lot of sense. For non-deep tech companies, usually we find the amount of paperwork is quite a bit. So you want to be much more selective, we think, especially post-revenue, for which programs to apply for, because some of them can require a lot of time. And there's a lot of burden of proof. And so it just takes away from the main business. And it also reduces your flexibility. So you want to be very, very cognizant of how you're approaching the grant strategy. It's not a silver bullet solution to business funding, but it is a very, very good source. So we encourage every business to look at it, but we also recommend that their business is sort of able to stand on its own.
That's an insightful view of the funding ecosystem, Shake, and it shows entrepreneurs how to build a comprehensive, multi-layered funding plan. Very helpful. Finally, let's kind of discuss the value of an expert partner and your vision for the future of innovation financing. Shake, Henderson Consulting provides end-to-end support, as I highlighted in my intro as well, to businesses that are seeking government funding. And you are a trusted advisor in this space. Please tell us, how does Henderson Consulting's expertise help clients avoid the pitfalls and drive growth? And what is your vision for the future of innovation financing in Canada?
Perfect. So, yeah, so we want to say one thing is many SR&ED consultants and other grant providers, some of them charge hourly, some of them work purely on a contingency basis. So our firm is working on a purely contingency basis, which means all our consults are totally free, right? We don't charge anything for those. And our entire work process is free until after you've gotten the money into your business. So we don't charge anything besides that. So if you want to talk to us, it's an open door, and we don't charge for that. And the reason I mention that is a lot of people are afraid to use some of the resources that are available to them to really learn more about the grant programs, and many of them are actually available to you free of cost. Okay. Many, perhaps the majority of SR&ED firms actually work on a purely contingency basis. So you should feel free to go talk to them and see what's available for you specifically. And many of them will also be able to tell you about what other programs would be good for you and help you develop that strategy. Now, when we look towards the future of Canadian funding and the ecosystem and the landscape, I think Canada has a strong funding program overall. And in fact, the most recent administration has actually strengthened SR&ED again. They've, for example, I believe, increased the max amount of claims from 3 million to 4.5. And they've also allowed for capital expenditures to be considered again, which were previously removed. So they're strengthening this. The government is behind these programs. It's been around for 40 years. But Canada in general has a history of being very, very proactive with funding and innovation. Even during the COVID period, we saw that there was a lot of funding that they were trying to get out to businesses. So we think that Canada has a very good landscape. What we would love to see is a little bit more. There's a lot of programs, many of which are very, very small, and it feels like it's less. It creates a lot of confusion and noise for business owners because sorting through 1,600 programs, even just reading the fine print would take months for somebody to do. So we think that a little bit more concentration and clarity would really help the landscape and help people understand which ones to prioritize. We also think that a lot of business owners are not aware of what are the top 3 to 5 programs they should really be thinking about. So we think that those are some areas in which Canada can improve. But I do think we have a very strong program, and I think firms like ours are really trying to bridge the gap between what the government has put forward and what businesses are aware of and that they can get. And we continue to hope that Canada continues to invest in those, and that as Canada's economy really, we're trying to, this year, really trying to integrate the Canadian economy more. We think that these programs are an important component of it. And there's a lot of synergy between what the federal government is trying to do with the Canadian economy and the grant programs. I'd say the final thing is we'd love to see a little bit more cooperation between the federal and the provincial levels with the grant programs, just so that there's, again, more clarity and there's a overall coherence to everything. But as I said, I think we have a strong and emerging landscape there. And because it's non-dilutive, it's a really attractive way, and it's an advantage that Canadian businesses and Canadian startups have over many other countries, because they can actually get non-dilutive funding, and it's much more attractive to investors because the cap table looks better. So that's another advantage for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Well, that's an inspiring vision, Shake, and it's clear that expert guidance is instrumental in helping businesses really navigate this complex terrain. But this has been an overall great conversation. Really, your commitment to empowering businesses with expert guidance is clearly positioning, Henderson Consulting as a vital partner for Canadian innovators. So we really appreciate you coming down to explain our audience this. The good insights. But as we wrap up now, Sheikh, what is that one key message that you would like listeners to take away about confidently pursuing innovation and growth? What would it be?
Perfect. Yeah. So of course, every business has to innovate to grow, right? That's very important, and the government understands this. This is why these programs support innovation. Okay, and they support employment. It's also important. Many of them are about employee training and upskilling. So the government wants your business to innovate and to grow, hire people. So that's the mandate that they're following. So that's the first thing. And then there is a lot of funding therefore available, a lot of which is non-dilutive and on better terms than you can get anywhere else. Okay, from a financing perspective, from a grants perspective. So we really encourage it. There's 3 points here. One is it's money that is available to your business. It's money that's often simpler to get than it seems, because a lot of the red tape and bureaucracy, there are people who already know how to navigate it. And it's kind of money that you've already earned sometimes as a business. These are things you're already doing as a business. You don't have to jump through hoops or do other things. A lot of grant programs are designed to really fuel normal business activities, or sometimes when you need to make major changes. So there's a lot of funding available for you. There's a lot of support, and it's very, very helpful. And it's not so complex. It's not this thing, and that there is no downside to going through the process and applying. The government encourages applications. They really promote that. So we encourage every business to really consider grants, whether you're small, medium, or a larger business, whether you're old business, new business, whether you're pre or post revenue, there are programs that are very, very attractive and suitable for you. And those will further your business and help you really earn more rewards in exchange for the economic value you produce. So we encourage business owners to do it. And again, for example, we work on a purely contingency basis. We don't work hourly. We don't charge any money out of pocket at all. And there are many companies like it, and there's many government education that you can get. So you don't have to take any risks to educate yourself and potentially apply for these programs.
That is a powerful and a very actionable message. Thank you so much, Shake, for being here with us and for sharing such great insights and expertise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And that was an insightful conversation with Shake Dewan on unlocking Canadian government funding, mastering the SR&ED program, the essential documentation that is needed to avoid audit risks, leverage the full funding landscape, and the value of an expert partner in achieving innovation and growth. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. We really appreciate your continued support. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more expert insights and resources that can help your business thrive. You can also visit our website, CanadianSME.ca, for valuable information and tools. A special shout out before we leave to our partners, RBC, UPS, A1 Global College, ADP, and Google for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses in Canada. Until next time, please keep innovating and striving for success. We'll see you in the next episode.